The James Webb Telescope discovered something terrifying in deep space. I work for NASA as an astronomer, and there are certain things we keep hidden from the public. No, the Earth isn't flat, and aliens don't control the government. Fuck, I wish those were the cases, as the truth is much, much worse. In 1993, the Hubble Space Telescope saw a star disappear. It didn't go supernova or die naturally, it simply went dark over the span of a few minutes. The star was already too faint to see with the naked eye, and ground-based telescopes had trouble picking it out from among the surrounding stars, so the event wasn't widely known to the public. At the time, we thought the most likely explanation was that a cloud of interstellar dust had drifted between Earth and the star, occluding it from view. It was noted and mostly forgotten about. In 2007, 2 more stars vanished. Due to the circumstances of this event, this was much more concerning. The 2 stars in question were part of a binary system, orbiting each other at a fairly close distance. If a cloud of interstellar dust was the culprit again, they would have both seemed to disappear simultaneously, or very close to it. Instead, both stars faded individually over a period of minutes, separated by a span of about 8 hours. This binary system was also about 15 light-years closer to Earth than the star that had previously disappeared in 1993. After carefully reviewing millions of Hubble images, 2 more stars were identified which had gone out in the years 1995 and 2002. These were all in the same stellar neighborhood, only a handful of light-years from each other. The only conclusion we could draw was that some unknown influence traveling close to the speed of light was shrouding or destroying these stars. Unfortunately, the Hubble wasn't sensitive enough to tell us any more than that. The James Webb Space Telescope first came online a few months ago. Although official channels will tell you that it's still undergoing testing, we've been actively collecting data since early February. One of the first things we did was to aim the telescope at the regions of space occupied by the vanished stars. If they were being blocked by dust clouds, I hope some of us still held on to, the increased sensitivity of the JWST may have been able to see through them and confirm that the stars were still there. Unfortunately, we had no such luck. The first 3 stars that had disappeared were still completely dark. Gravitational wave detectors, though, soon found something odd. In all cases, not only were the stellar masses still present, but the amount of mass had actually increased. More sensitive observations had also detected a type of string or web stretching through the space connecting these now invisible stars. When we trained the telescope on the binary system that had vanished in 2007, which was the nearest point at which this phenomenon had so far been observed, there was finally enough ambient EM spectrum radiation left to try a mass spectrometer reading. If you're not aware, mass spectrometry is an incredibly useful process where, by measuring the patterns of light wavelengths emitted or reflected by an object, we can learn tons of useful information, such as its temperature, speed and direction of movement, and chemical composition. The readings we got from the binary stars didn't make any sense. First of all, they were cold, almost as cold as the surrounding interstellar medium. Whatever had happened to these stars had snuffed them out completely, or somehow prevented their light from escaping. What was truly puzzling, however, were the emission lines returned by the mass spectrometer. Several familiar elements, such as hydrogen, carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, and magnesium were identified, but these were few and far between. Most of the readings didn't correspond to any known chemical elements, and even seemed to defy what we knew about the physics of light, matter, and chemistry. This massive, star-spanning structure was primarily composed of materials that we didn't even have names for, and may not even have been matter as we understand it. Speculation ran rampant. Obviously, such a thing couldn't be a natural phenomenon. Finally, we had proof of extraterrestrial life. But what was this thing we had discovered? And for what purpose was it being built? The leading hypothesis was that we were looking at a series of Dyson shells, massive solar collectors built to completely envelop stars in order to capture 100% of their energy output. Such a concept had been envisioned in the early 20th century as a potential source of energy for an interstellar civilization. Ever since then, the idea had found its way into popular science fiction. The construction of these massive structures had actually been theorized to be one of the first signs of intelligent extraterrestrial life that we may someday detect. It seemed that day was today. The theory still didn't explain everything, though. First of all, there was the impossible speed with which the stars were covered. Constructing a Dyson shell from scratch in a matter of minutes was beyond even the wildest speculations of scientists and sci-fi writers. Then there were the mysterious filaments that connected the shells over distances of light years. No one had any idea what purpose these could serve, or how they could even be built. Everyone at NASA was fascinated by this mystery. In hindsight, we may have been better off if we had never discovered the truth. Less than a month ago, the JWST detected a series of unusual energy bursts emanating from interstellar space. These were occurring at the very edge of a star system, approximately 12 light-years away from the binary system that vanished in 2007. As we focused the telescope on this system, we soon determined that these were not natural phenomena either. The energy signatures, which were still flashing intermittently, matched what would be expected from thermonuclear and antimatter-based explosions, along with several other types of energies that we couldn't identify. These explosions, although still not visible to the naked eye on Earth from that distance, were absolutely tremendous in magnitude. Easily billions of times more powerful than any nuke that humanity could conceivably build. After experimenting with the telescope's settings, we were able to get a clearer picture of what was going on. The tip of one of the interstellar filaments that linked the Dyson system was passing through the Oort cloud of the distant star system, approaching its sun. And whoever lived there was fighting back. Their weapons were able to slow the thing's advance, shattering, breaking off, and vaporizing planet-sized chunks of the object. But it seemed to be rebuilding itself almost as fast as it was being destroyed. After less than a week, the explosion stopped. It seems that they had run out of ammunition. In the void between stars, we knew that these things traveled at nearly the speed of light. But as we watched it approach the inner star system, its pace slowed as it swelled in size, preparing to devour the system's star. We quickly trained the telescope's mirrors on the doomed sun. We were about to watch whatever this thing was blot out another star, but in real time. We all held our breath as we watched the projected image of the main sequence star, slightly larger than our own sun. At first, nothing seemed to be happening, but soon, a small shadow appeared on the edge of the luminous orb, soon followed by another shadow, and then a third. The shadows began to converge, forming a strange yet somehow familiar pattern as they blocked out the star's light.
What are those?
One of my colleagues gasped.
They almost look like...
She paused, as if afraid to say the next word for fear of ridicule. I, however, had no such hesitancy. Leaves, I said, my voice monotone. The situation was far too incredible to express any emotional reaction, even that of pure shock. They looked like leaves. We watched as over a period of minutes, a web of shadowy outlines matching the familiar shapes of oblong leaves and thin vines proceeded to blot out the remaining light from the distant star. By that point, everyone in the room had realized the truth. The phenomenon we had been tracking for so many years wasn't some hyper-advanced alien megastructure. Hydrogen, carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, and magnesium, some of the few familiar elements we had detected. They were all components of chlorophyll. It was a plant. An enormous plant that spanned across light years. And, much like terrestrial plants, it sought out light to fuel itself. The filaments connecting the stars across the interstellar space were stems, branches. It would grow in the direction of the nearest stars it sensed, completely enveloping them and then moving on. Any life inhabiting these planets, orbiting these stars, would be left to freeze to death, or perhaps even worse. It was possible that the plant would devour those planets to add to its mass as well. Everyone was silent as the telescope continued to gather data. Eventually, after what seemed like an eternity, a young astronomer spoke up from the far end of the room, addressing our supervisor. "Sir, we've begun to detect the formation of another tendril leaving the system. Its vector is..." He gulped. He didn't need to say anymore, but he did anyway. "It's heading directly for our sun." "How much time do we have?" The supervisor replied grimly. "Judging by the time lag, distance, relativistic properties, and previously observed speeds of this thing, I'd estimate no more than 27 years, sir." 27 years? We had just watched this galactic weed overwhelm a civilization that was, at the very least, thousands of years ahead of us in technology, and we had less than 3 decades. I'll probably be found and silenced for posting this, but I don't care. I have to tell someone. I can't keep this a secret any longer. When the sun turns black and the world begins to freeze, at least you'll have some idea of what's going on. Small comfort, it may be. NASA is trying to kill me. My name is Dr. Adrian Reinhardt, and I'm the last surviving member of the Kronos project team under the National Aeronautics and Space Administration. You've never heard about me or the project because, for all intents and purposes, we don't exist. But I'll be damned if NASA is going to let my colleagues' deaths be for nothing more than a classified folder collecting dust on a shelf. I know you probably won't believe me. I wouldn't if I were you, but I'm not asking you to believe me. I'm just asking you to listen. Look, the Kronos project was secretly established in 1988 by NASA and headed by the Department of Defense. The goal was to use deep-range satellites and telescopes to search the far regions of space for signs of life beyond our solar system. What we found was something far worse. In 2004, a signal was detected from the Boots Void, which is a vast span of nothingness in space, nearly 1 billion light-years in diameter. And when I say nothing, I really mean nothing. The void contains absolutely no matter, or even dark matter. It's essentially a definitive null zone in the universe, devoid of anything, all except for a single, continuous signal. I remember it like it was yesterday. My colleagues and I were sitting in a room that can be best described as a discount version of the Mission Control Facility in Houston. We were all there, at our desks, going over useless sheets of data from other reconnaissance scans until the detection alarm started to go off, signifying that a signal had been detected from deep space. When we started going over the data, we triangulated the source to right ascension, 14 hours, 50 minutes. Declination, plus 46 degrees. For those not versed in stellar coordinates, it pointed right smack dab in the middle of the void. Given the vast empty region of space, we at first thought it was a system malfunction. But when we restarted it, it began immediately reporting a signal coming from those coordinates once again. We had originally thought we were just picking up fragments of a supernova or stellar burst of a long dead star that had once been in that section of space. But that hypothesis was quickly uprooted when we were able to filter through the background data and convert it into an audio format. It wasn't one long wave of static that you would normally detect from such cosmic events. It was a continuation rhythmic series of beeps that sounded eerily like a heartbeat. Now, of course, we were miles away from actually confirming or denying that this signal was the work of some advanced alien civilization hiding away in the empty regions of space. But we were still absolutely ecstatic over the finding. I don't remember seeing a single one of those faces in there not smiling from ear to ear while that beating, pulsing signal repeated itself over and over again through the speakers of the control center. Following our little eureka moment, we followed the proper procedures and contacted our administrators and awaited further instructions as we aimed every satellite and listening device we had at our disposal at those coordinates. I remember feeling like a kid on Christmas Eve as I was driving home that night, so impossibly eager to see what the next day would bring. Unfortunately, the days would roll into months, then into years until the next chapter of the ongoing cosmic heartbeat signal would present itself. On August 24th, 2009, we were given the go-ahead by the Obama administration to send a reply signal into the same region of the void that the signal was still coming from. Although this was mainly done as a ceremonial milestone, given the fact that the region of space was nearly 700 million light-years away, it would be at least 1.4 billion years before a reply to our message would be received. Given that the message was still a continuous repetition of 2 beats per second, we decided to use a similar frequency using a Morse code translation of hello. We popped some champagne and enjoyed the event, as much as one could in a top-secret research facility under a shadowy section of the United States government. That night, at around 3 a.m., I received a call from Dr. Westcott concerning the signal. I'll never forget how disappointed and yet terrified his voice was over the phone. The signal, he said. It just stopped. For years, that seemed to be the end of our little interstellar communications. But we still carried on with our research, always keeping at least one monitoring device locked on the targeted coordinates of the void. We had a few detected bursts of information that piqued our interests at the time from other regions of space, but nothing like the heartbeat signal. I wish I could tell you that's where the story ends. I wish I could say that rather than typing this out as the last few hours of my life ticked away, that I was back in the vicinity researching the stars. But these are wishful thoughts of a man at the end of his rope. It's at this time I've come to the realization that there are no happy endings. 8 months ago, while going through a routine series of scans, we received yet another transmission from the Boots Void. One I'm still trying to come to terms with. Not because it began again, but because it defied the very laws of physics. This was the message. To translate that Morse code, it means goodbye. It was a reply to the message we sent nearly 11 years ago. Somehow, a communication that should have transpired over a course of 1.4 billion years took place in just 11. It didn't make any sense. It still doesn't. None of what was happening made any logical sense, and that wasn't even the ridiculous part. As soon as the transmission was received and translated, the empty space around the center of the void began to expand as the surrounding star system seemed to just blink out of existence. One by one, like a series of light bulbs being turned off, the stars began to go out. It was almost as if we were watching it occur in real time, which was another astronomical impossibility. You see, we can only observe as fast as light travels, which means if we were watching the Boots void that is 700 million light years away, we would be seeing it as it was 700 million years ago. But now, we were watching an event unfold that was absolutely cosmically impossible. The rate at which the stars were vanishing was expanding the void at a rate of nearly 5 million light years a minute. I don't know how to describe it other than saying that the dark nothingness was growing faster than the speed of light itself, seemingly consuming and extinguishing everything in its path. All the while, that message just kept ringing throughout the room. I don't know how or why, but very quickly the implications of this flooded over the control center as my colleagues and I began to realize the gravity of this impossible event. There was no argument amongst us whether this was possible or not. It clearly wasn't, yet it was happening all the same. At this rate, it will reach the solar system in a little under a year. Dr. Waterford sounded weak and hoarse as he exclaimed the obvious. We were all thinking the same thing. In a little under 360 days, this cosmic expanse would reach our very own star system. We, of course, didn't know what would happen when it did, but in astronomy, you always think of the worst. If the sun was somehow extinguished by the void as all the surrounding stars were, it would take a little under a year for the Earth to become an uninhabitable wasteland. That was, of course, even if the planet wasn't completely consumed and absorbed into nothingness as well. The entire time I ran the calculations and possible scenarios in my head, the message we received kept popping up again and again, seemingly trying to answer the question as to what was going to happen. Goodbye. It seemed to hit Dr. Redmond first as he leapt to his feet and made for a dashing sprint to the exit. Soon, everyone began to follow. Under normal circumstances, you'd think that the man's cheese had finally slid off his metaphorical crackers. But given the current situation, given what we were witnessing, he may have been the most sensible one in that entire room. Then, just as a few others were making their way towards the exit, it suddenly dawned on me as well. The message. It must have been telling us and everything else in its path goodbye. Whatever was in the Brute's void was coming for us. Coming for everything. At the time, we really weren't thinking of the consequences of our actions. We weren't focused on the repercussions of suddenly jumping ship and going AWOL from a top-secret government program. The only thing racing in our mind was the sweeping wall of nothingness, hurtling towards us faster than the speed of light. I went straight home and drowned myself in a bottle, hoping to wake up the next morning to realize everything was just a crazy dream. I wouldn't be so lucky, of course. In truth, I would come to find that out very quickly. That night, at about 1 a.m., I was awoken by my phone. When I went to check the unknown caller, it turned out to be one of my colleagues, Dr. Maverick Burkham, who was one of the last men to even leave the facility that day.
You've got to run, Adrian!
What are you talking about? I asked, my head pounded with a throbbing migraine.
They're scrubbing the project, cleaning house.
Don't you know what that means? That first sentence was all I needed to sober up. If what he said was true, then word had gotten up the chain of command, and they now had come to know about both the discovery and its implications, as well as the science team's reaction to said implications. If they were scrubbing the project, then we would be first to be cleaned up. How do you know about this? I asked him. I tried to get over to McGuire's house to discuss possible outcomes about the expansion, but when I got there, his house was burning to ashes, and Cuthbert and Lethbridge won't answer their phones, and on top of all that, I think I'm being followed. Are you sure? I asked, as I made my way to the bedroom window, searching for any sign of government hitman. Yes, absolutely. I've driven around my block twice now, and I'm on 58 South. There's been a black, unmarked car following me the entire way. Listen, you've got to get the hell out of Dodge, right now, while you still got a pot to piss in. If you're half as smart as I know you are, then you'll... Those were the last words I heard from him before the signal gave out. I didn't need much more of a warning after that. I quickly got some things together, and I piled up into my Avalon and hit the highway. I've been on the run ever since then, dodging any signs of suspicion by moving state to state, county to county, all until now. Once I post this, they'll obviously be able to trace it, and I'm going to let them. I've been running all year, and I'm tired of it. Mainly because there doesn't seem to be a point to it any longer. Within a few months, the expansion will reach us anyway. So forgive me if I take the easy way out of this. I wish I could tell you in these final words that the governments of the world are working together to somehow try to stop this, but they know better. They know it's coming. And rather than be upfront with you, they want to hide it as long as possible. That's why there's been so much shit clogging the news and media here lately. They want total blanket coverage of so much chaos here on Earth. That way no one looks up to see the inevitable. It's coming, and there's no stopping it. So do me a favor, will you? Make what little life you have left worth it. Hold your loved ones. Go on that vacation you keep putting off. Do what makes you happy. Live. Goodbye.